On a hot August night in 1947, a stocky, middle-aged man leans over a giant map of India. The map isn't just paper, it's a battlefield. Red pins mark 565 princely states. Some loyal, some wavering, some on the edge of rebellion. Every few minutes, a messenger bursts in with new bad news. A palace plotting to go independent, a border about to explode, a rival. In his own party arguing for a softer line. The British are leaving. The deadline is not a metaphor. It's on his calendar. 2 years, then 1 year, then a handful of months. If he fails, India will not be born as a single country. It will shatter. Outside his office, an elegant, idealistic leader with a rose in his lapel, Jawaharlal Nehru, is already being hailed as the future prime minister. The cameras love him. The world listens to him. Inside the office, the man at the map, with his bald head and heavy farmer's shoulders, has a different job. Make sure there is still an India for Nehru to lead. His name is Vallabhbhai Patel. To millions, he will become the Iron Man of India. But once he was just a barefoot village boy who wasn't supposed to be anything at all. To understand how that boy reached this room with a bleeding map and an impossible clock, we need to go back, far back, to a dusty field in Gujarat in the late 1800s. The sun over Kita district is a white fire. The earth has split into cracks wide enough to swallow a child's foot. A boy, maybe 10 years old, stands at the edge of a dry well, staring down at its black throat. Everyone else has gone home. No water today, maybe none tomorrow. The boy's clothes are patched. His feet are calloused, but his eyes, calm, heavy-lidded, don't blink. Where others see emptiness, he seems to be measuring something, calculating. This is Vallabh, born on 31st October 1875 in Nadiad, raised in the village of Karamsad. His father, Javarbai, is a small farmer, a man of few words and fierce pride. At night, relatives whisper that he once fought in the army of the legendary Queen Lakshmibai of Jhansi, riding against the British, in the Great Revolt of 1857. Whether the story is entirely true or not, the boy hears it the same way every time. Indians can stand up to an empire and lose everything. His mother, Ladbai, is the opposite. Practical, quiet, steel-wrapped in affection. She pulls the children to her during storms, not to comfort them, but to make sure none are lost. In this house, love and discipline are the same thing. There is no silk, no chandeliers, no tutors. Vallabh grows up surrounded by cracked mud walls, the smell of cattle, and the constant grinding fear of drought and debt. He watches neighbors sell ornaments, then land, then the very tools of their trade, just to pay taxes to a government an ocean away. He understands one thing early. In this world, if you bend, you are broken. So you do not bend. There is a story people in Gujarat will tell for decades. One day, young Vallabh falls sick. A boil appears on his neck, swelling, red and angry. There's no doctor in the village, only a barber who dabbles in surgery with shaking hands and rusty instruments. The barber looks at the boy, then at the boil, then at the parents. It must be cut, he says. It will hurt. He might faint. The room is hot. The air smells of sweat and fear. The barber hesitates. The knife trembles above the skin. Move, the boy says. He takes the knife himself. No anesthetic. No help. In a single brutal movement, he slices into his own flesh. Blood runs down his chest. The room gasps. He does not scream. It's a moment that will harden into legend. The boy who would rather cut his own wound than trust a trembling hand. Pain is not an enemy. Pain is a test. School, such as it is a low building with dusty mats and a teacher who beats more than he teaches. But books are a door, and Vallabh senses it. He borrows, begs, memorizes. He walks miles to the nearest town to sit for exams, his stomach often empty. There is another boy in class, sharper clothes, softer hands, who becomes a sort of rival. He is the son of a local official, already marked for success, always sure he will get the highest marks, the best job, the easiest life. When exam results are posted, the official's son scans the list, smiling. Then the smile vanishes. At the top is a name he did not expect. V.J. Patel. Not the boy from the big house. The farmer's son. The rivalry is quiet, but it burns. It teaches Vallabh that talent is not enough. The world is tilted in favor of those with connections. If you want to win, you must work twice as hard, move twice as fast. Later in life, that lesson will be tested on a national scale when his rival isn't a village boy but the most celebrated leader in India. For now, the battlefield is smaller. Mark sheets, clerkships, the long, narrow ladder out of poverty. Teenage years bring no romance, no leisurely youth. He is married early, as was the custom, to Javerba, a girl from a nearby village. They barely know each other at first. But there is no time to linger over feelings. Survival dominates. He takes small jobs, tutors children, copies legal papers late into the night. The hunger in him has a shape now: law. If he can master the language of courts, seals, and signatures, he can cut through injustice as surely as he cut through that boil. He passes his matriculation exam late, older than his classmates, a reminder that he started racing long after the others. Yet he does not slow down. He trains as a pleader, a kind of junior lawyer, and begins to move from dusty village offices to small-town courts, Godra, Borsad, Ananda. In these cramped rooms with their squeaking fans and reeking ink, he first meets the other face of power, the British legal system. To many Indians, it is a brick wall of language and formality. To Vallabh, it is an opponent he can read. He watches British magistrates with a predator's patience, their habits, their weak points, their boredom. He learns to speak in a tone that is respectful but never servile, precise but never decorative. Soon a pattern emerges. When a case looks unwinnable, poor clients come to Patel Saheb, and often they walk away upright, their land or honor intact. Other local lawyers, including some from richer backgrounds, notice this with irritation. In the cafes outside the courthouse, they grumble, "Who does this Patel think he is? A farmer's son from Karamsad, playing at being an English barrister." The quiet rivalry of school days has changed shape but not direction. The world keeps telling him where he doesn't belong, and he keeps refusing to listen. Yet inside him, a larger ambition is growing, dangerous and almost ridiculous: London. In the early 1900s, for a man from a village in Gujarat, London is not just another city, it is another planet. It is where the real lawyers are made, where the Middle Temple and Inner Temple turn colonized subjects into barristers in black gowns and white wigs. Vallabh wants that transformation, not for glamour, though he will enjoy the suits, but for power. A London-trained barrister can't be easily bullied by a provincial magistrate. With that certificate, he can stand eye to eye with the empire's own men. But dreams need money, and there is almost none. He scrimps ruthlessly. He lives in cheap lodgings, eats simple food, takes on brutal workloads. Coins drop one by one into a mental jar labeled England. Slowly, the impossible becomes just barely possible, then a twist that could have changed Indian history before it began. One day, a letter arrives from London, an offer of admission. But it is addressed simply to Mr. V. J. Patel. In the Patel house, there are two men with those initials, Vallabhbhai and his elder brother, Vithalbhai. Who is the rightful owner of the dream? Vallabh opens the envelope. He reads the words that could have been his own escape: a place to study in London, a path to the bar. He looks at his brother, older, already on a legal path, carrying his own disappointments. Then he folds the dream away. "Pi," he says quietly, "this is for you. You should go." He gives up his chance and watches his brother leave for England. It is a choice that will haunt him, sharpen him, and later echo when he gives up something much larger than a letter, the highest office in a newborn nation. He does not surrender the dream. He only postpones it. He sits for another qualifying exam. This time there is no confusion. The letter that comes is unmistakably for him. He is going to London. The year is 1910. He is 35 years old, an age when most men in his position have already accepted their lot. Before he leaves, he makes a private, brutal calculation. He has just enough money to survive for 30 months in London. The bar course usually takes 36. 30 months. That is his deadline. If he fails, he doesn't just lose a diploma. He risks returning to India in disgrace, debt, and humiliation on his back. For a boy who cut his own flesh rather than trust a shaky hand, failure is not an option. London hits him like cold air after a furnace. Fog, rain, brick on brick. The crowds move fast. No one looks at anyone. He is a stranger in coarse Indian clothes, the empire's subject standing at the heart of the empire. He changes quickly. The dhoti gives way to suits, the rough village Gujarati to polished English legal arguments. In classrooms lined with law books, he sits among young men whose ancestors wrote the very rules he must now master. He doesn't just pass, he attacks. He arranges his days like a military campaign. Lectures, library, meals, more library, revision until his eyes burn. While others go to concerts and dinners, he hunts down past exam papers, measures exactly how many marks he needs to top, how many hours of sleep he can afford to lose. The 30-month clock in his head ticks louder every night. He finishes the course in just 22 months, ranking first in his class. The colonial system that kept people like his father on their knees now gives its highest academic nod to the farmer's son. It is a deep, delicious contradiction. But history isn't impressed by certificates. In the grand scheme of India's struggle, the empire has barely noticed him yet. It will. He returns to India in 1913 with a barrister's qualification, polished English, and a wardrobe of sharp suits. He sets up practice in Ahmedabad, a growing industrial city on the Sabarmati River. Mills are rising. So are smokestacks, chimneys, small fortunes. He moves easily in this world. The ambitious middle layer of colonial India, the lawyers and merchants who know how to speak deferentially to British officials and firmly to everyone else. Cases pour in, property disputes, commercial arguments, odd criminal trials. In court, he is terrifyingly efficient. Few words, no theatrics, just a relentless logic that pins witnesses down until they contradict themselves. Soon he is one of the city's most sought-after lawyers, earning well, living comfortably. The boy of cracked heels and empty wells has become the man of polished shoes and evening walks. Some friends begin whispering that he could enter politics if he wants. The Indian National Congress is gathering strength. There are meetings, speeches, resolutions. People in immaculate clothes argue about self-rule and dominion status. He hears the names that are becoming famous: Bal Gangadhar Tilak, Gopal Krishna Gokhale, Muhammad Ali Jinnah, Jawaharlal Nehru. Nehru especially seems like the opposite of everything Vallabh has been. Young, aristocratic, Cambridge-educated, idealistic. When their paths will finally cross in full force, the friction between these two men, the peasant son and the aristocrat son, will shape India's fate. But right now, for Vallabh, politics feels distant, almost theatrical. He has lived too long in the close combat of real lives, farmers crushed by debt, widows cheated out of land, clients facing prison because they cannot speak the language of the rulers. He scoffs at leaders who only talk. Then, one day in 1917, a small, almost fragile figure in a plain dhoti arrives in Ahmedabad. In a hall in the city, people crowd the walls, craning their necks. They've heard about this new man from South Africa who fought for Indian rights there and won, Mohandas Karamchand Gandhi. Vallabh arrives late. He doesn't care much for saints. He considers himself a man of the real world, courts, files, deadlines. But something unexpected happens when Gandhi begins to speak. The voice is soft but unshakable. The ideas are, in their own way, violently new. Non-cooperation. Refusal to obey unjust laws. Not with guns, with collective will. With the very stubbornness that has carried Vallabh from a cracked well in Karamsad to the polished benches of the Ahmedabad bar, Gandhi talks of peasants in Kheda district, ruined by taxes they cannot pay after a failed crop. The British want their money anyway. The law is on the government side. The law that Vallabh has mastered. Gandhi's question cuts through the hall. When the law is unjust, what is your duty? Something twists inside Vallabh. For years, the law has been his weapon, his shield, his staircase. Now this frail man is asking him to consider that sometimes justice may lie outside the neat lines of statutes and courtroom procedures. After the meeting, someone introduces them. Gandhi looks at him with calm, searching eyes. You are Patel? Yes? I have heard you are a very good lawyer. I try to be, Vallabh says, guarded. I need a lawyer, Gandhi replies. But not in court, in the villages. It is a challenge and an invitation, wrapped together. Behind them, history waits, impatient. In a few months, Kheda's peasants will refuse to pay taxes. The government will threaten seizure of land, cattle, homes. Someone will have to organize them, stand between frightened villagers and a ruthless administration, translate fear into discipline. The rivalries of his youth, with rich classmates, with complacent lawyers, with a distant empire, are about to expand into something much larger. A new competition is forming, not for money or rank, but for the soul of a nation. And Vallabhbhai Patel, the man who cut his own skin rather than trust a weak hand, will have to decide, will he remain the empire's most brilliant local lawyer, or become its most dangerous opponent. The day he decided to kill his career, the room was quiet enough to hear a paper breathe. On the desk in front of him lay two piles. On one side, crisp legal briefs, neatly tied, a calendar full of paying clients, the black barrister's gown that had turned a village boy into one of Ahmedabad's highest-earning lawyers. On the other side, a thin sheet of paper with Gandhi's call for non-cooperation, a demand that Indians walk away from government jobs, courts, titles, comfort, and step into the storm. Vallabhbhai Patel looks from the gown to the paper, from security to uncertainty. For 20 years, law has been his weapon, his proof that a farmer's son can beat the empire at its own game. Now the same empire has fired bullets into unarmed crowds at Jallianwala Bagh. The law he loved so much has stood aside and watched. The choice is obscene in its simplicity. Keep arguing in clean rooms, or step into a country that is starting to bleed. He picks up the barrister's gown, folds it, slowly, puts it away. He walks outside into a Ahmedabad street thick with dust and rumors of revolt. The empire just lost one of its finest local servants. India just gained one of its hardest commanders. The turning point had begun years earlier in the fields of Kedah. In 1918, the rains fail in Kedah district. Crops wither, granaries shrink. Under the British land revenue rules, peasants have the right to ask for relief in such a disaster. The government's reply is simple: pay. No harvest, pay, no money. Sell your land, your cattle, your children's future, pay. Into this impossible equation walk two men, Gandhi, with his doctrine of nonviolent resistance, and Vallabh, with his cold, tactical mind. Gandhi outlines the idea. If the peasants simply refuse to pay, together in disciplined unity, the government cannot jail an entire district. But ideas don't knock on 1,000 doors. Men do. Vallabh takes the map of Kedah in his hands like a general studying a battlefield. Villages are not dots to him. They are faces, debts, tempers, fears. There is a brutal deadline built into the soil itself, the revenue collection date. On that day, tax collectors will arrive with police, padlocks, and receipts. If the people are not ready, united and disciplined, the revolt will crack in a single morning. He has weeks, no more. He rides bullock carts, walks dusty paths, stands under neem trees in village after village. By lantern light, he explains the plan in blunt Gujarati: do not pay, no matter what threats are made. No secret deals, no breaking ranks. Men listen with folded arms, suspicion thick in the air. And if they seize our fields? Someone shouts. Then I stand with you, he replies. If your house is taken, I sleep in the dust beside you. If you go to jail, I go first. He is not romantic. He speaks of suffering the way a surgeon speaks of an operation. It will hurt, but if we hesitate, it will kill us. When the deadline comes, tax collectors march in expecting the usual: a few frightened resistors, some easy seizures, everything over by lunch. Instead, they find locked houses, entire streets emptied with military precision, documents hidden, valuables moved. Village after village repeats the same choreography of quiet defiance. Officials rage, threaten, seize what they can. The peasants do not bend. In the smoky offices of the Bombay presidency, reports pile up. The revolt is spreading, not dying. Even worse, it is disciplined. No random violence, no easy excuse for mass shootings. Behind that discipline stands one name: Patel. After months of stalemate, the government blinks first. It quietly suspends revenue for the worst affected areas. Peasants keep their land. The movement wins. Gandhi embraces him with genuine joy. You have done great work, brother, he says. But those close to Gandhi notice something else. In Kedah, the quiet lawyer from Ahmedabad has revealed a different talent. Not just courage, but control. Where Gandhi is the soul, Patel is the spine. The years that follow forge that spine into iron. As chairman of the Ahmedabad Municipal Board, he attacks the city's filth and disease with the same ruthlessness he once reserved for opponents in court. He pushes for clean water, better drainage, the removal of rotting carcasses from public spaces. During plague and famine, he organizes relief with military efficiency. It is not glamorous work. There are no fiery speeches, no waving crowds. But it shows him something crucial: how to run things, how to turn noble resolutions into working drains, functioning schools, real change. In 1918, he helps Gandhi lead a mill workers' strike in Ahmedabad. On one side, wealthy mill owners. On the other, exhausted laborers demanding fair wages. For 3 weeks he shuttles between the two, calming anger, preventing riots, holding the line. Each conflict adds another layer to his understanding of power. Farmers, workers, urban elites. He learns their languages, their breaking points. And somewhere behind it all, a distant figure begins to loom larger in his mind. Britain itself, the ultimate landlord of this intricate misery. Then comes 1920, and the call that forces his hand. The non-cooperation movement erupts after the horror of Jallianwala Bagh and the betrayal of broken war promises. Gandhi asks Indians to withdraw their cooperation from the machinery of rule, schools, courts, titles. For a lawyer like Patel, this is not just a political move. It is a personal guillotine. Friends try to stop him. Think carefully, Vallabh, one advises. You've built this practice over decades. You have children, responsibilities. Politics is wind, law is solid. He nods, then does the opposite. He publicly renounces his lucrative practice, stops appearing in British courts, puts on khadi, handspun cloth instead of his tailored suits. Some British officials snort. He'll be back, they say in their clubs. Men like that always return. They like their comforts too much. He does not return. The quiet clerk of files has become a full-time architect of rebellion. Arrests follow, public meetings, organizing drives. He moves through Gujarat like a slow whirlwind, leaving behind committees, volunteers, networks of information. When the non-cooperation movement is abruptly called off in 1922 after violent incidents in Chauri Chaura, many young radicals are furious with Gandhi. Patel is not pleased either, but he stays. Not because he is submissive, but because he has measured Gandhi's worth and found it greater than his doubts. Discipline is not doing what you like. It is doing what must be done, even when you dislike it. His true national arrival explodes in 1928, in a place that will etch itself into Indian memory, Bardoli. The government has announced a brutal 30% hike in land revenue in Bardoli Taluka, despite floods that have ravaged crops. It is mathematics with a gun, impossible to pay but mandatory. The villagers send one telegram, "Save us, Sardar." At that moment he is not yet Sardar, leader. That title will be born here. He visits the villages, sees the cracked fields, the hollow eyes of people who have nothing left to sell. The government gives no relief. Negotiation stall. He knows the rhythm now. There will be a deadline for revenue. Before that day, he must turn scattered desperation into steel-hard unity. He lays down rules so strict they sound like military orders. No one will pay the increased tax. No one will break ranks in secret. No one will insult or attack officers. No excuse for repression. Every confiscation, every auction will be recorded and reported. He organizes volunteer squads, Patels and Talatis of the movement, to move from house to house, checking, encouraging, sometimes scolding. The British strike back exactly as predicted. They confiscate cattle, seize fields, throw families out of homes. Auctioneers hammer away at land that has been in the same hands for generations. Through it all, he remains a cold center. When a rich farmer, terrified, tries to cut a secret deal and pay, Patel confronts him in public. "If you bend today," he says, eyes unblinking, "you may save your house, but you will bury this entire movement. Can you live under that shame?" The man, shaken, falls in line. Months pass. The news from Bardoli travels across India. A rebellion without guns, villages defying an empire with a terrifying calm. Finally, under pressure and fearing wider spread, the government surrenders. The hike is withdrawn. Confiscated lands are returned. The day he returns to Bardoli, thousands line the roads. Women shower him with flowers. Men lift him onto their shoulders. "A Sardar! Sardar!" The crowd roars. The title sticks. It is not ceremonial. It is a job description. The man you trust when everything is at stake. As his stature grows, so do his rivals. In the Indian National Congress, a new star is blazing, Jawaharlal Nehru. Younger, born to wealth, educated at Harrow and Cambridge, he speaks in English and Hindi of socialism, industrialization, world revolution. Youth adore him. Foreign journalists quote him. At party meetings, photographers flock to Nehru's angles, his windswept hair, his rose. Patel's bald head and stocky frame don't make elegant posters. He wears plain khadi, speaks in practical terms, has little patience for poetic phrases. Internally, a quiet comparison starts humming. Nehru is our future, some say. He dreams big. But without Patel, others reply, who will build the staircase to those dreams? The tension is real, but it is not yet open war. On the Salt March in 1930, it is Patel who organizes the countryside, arranges logistics, ensures volunteers are trained and disciplined. The British arrest him even before Gandhi begins the march, hoping to remove the movement's chief organizer. Crowds pouring into jails shout both names, Gandhi ki jai, Sardar Patel ki jai. When he emerges from prison, Congress chooses him as its president for the Karachi session in 1931, a role usually filled by the most trusted national leaders. Under his gavel, the Congress not only endorses the Gandhi-Irwin Pact, but also passes a landmark resolution on fundamental rights, free speech, equality before law, protection of workers. It is a glimpse of his core instinct. Every agitation must end in a document, a law, a framework. Passion is the spark. Structure is the fire that lasts. Through the stormy 1930s, as Gandhi moves in and out of prison and ideological battles rage, Patel increasingly becomes the party's organizer-in-chief. When provincial elections are announced under the Government of India Act of 1935, the Congress has an enormous opportunity and a terrifying risk. Contesting means stepping into the very institutions they have denounced. Losing would be a disaster. The task of candidate selection, campaign coordination, alliance balancing falls largely on one man, Patel. He travels relentlessly, hearing petitions, weighing rival factions, choosing who gets the precious Congress ticket in each seat. Every decision creates a supporter and an enemy. He does it anyway. The results in 1937 stun the British. Congress wins majorities in several provinces, forms governments, and begins to show for the first time what Indian rule might look like. Nehru becomes the face of aspiration, touring provinces, speaking of science and progress. Patel, mostly in the background, disciplines unruly ministers, settles disputes, ensures that Congress rule does not collapse under its own ambitions. Two trajectories, running side by side, the dreamer and the builder. One day they will collide. Then the world goes to war. In 1939, Britain drags India into World War II without consulting a single Indian leader. Congress ministries resign in protest. Resentment hardens into fury. Negotiations, missions, half-offers follow. Everything stops and starts until 1942, when Gandhi finally decides, enough. Do or die, he says. Quit India. Patel throws his full weight behind the call. He knows the price. This time the British will not bother with niceties. On 9th of August 1942, before dawn has properly broken over Bombay, police trucks surround Gawalia Tank Maidan, where Congress leaders have gathered. Within hours, almost the entire top leadership, Gandhi, Nehru, Patel, Azad, is arrested. Patel is taken to the Ahmednagar fort, then moved to Yerwada jail. Bars slam shut. Outside, India erupts in leaderless fury. For nearly 3 years, he sits in prison. On the surface, it is forced idleness. Inside, it is a pressure cooker. He reads, writes letters, argues late into the night with Nehru and others in the same prison over socialism, state power, the village versus the city. Their visions clash, their personal regard holds. But every time news leaks in from outside, it carries a dark message. While Congress leaders rot in jail, the Muslim League under Muhammad Ali Jinnah is growing. League ministers join wartime governments. The slogan Pakistan grows from a speculative idea into a concrete demand. From his cell, Patel can do nothing. Time, his favorite weapon, is now the enemy. Every month lost in prison is a month in which someone else is drawing lines on the map of India. When he walks out of jail in 1945, leaner, older, with prison's gray dust still in his clothes, he knows there is no luxury left. No more indefinite negotiations, no endless constitutional debates. Britain is exhausted by war. It wants to leave, soon. Someone will decide how and on what terms. And inside the Congress, someone will have to lead that final charge. In 1946, that choice takes a seemingly procedural form, the election of the Congress president. Under the party's informal tradition, the person elected president at the time of power transfer is usually the one the viceroy invites to form the government, effectively the future prime minister. Provincial Congress committees across India send in their nominations. The pattern is overwhelming. Most nominate one name, Vallabhbhai Patel. They see in him what struggles have revealed: toughness, administrative skill, the respect of colleagues, the ability to negotiate. Hard with the British and harder, if needed, with Indian princes and rivals. For a country on the edge of partition and chaos, he looks like the safest pair of hands. Nehru receives almost no provincial nominations. But then the situation twists in a way only Indian politics, with Gandhi at the center, can twist. Gandhi, who has always seen Nehru as his political heir, is uneasy at the thought of him being sidelined at this decisive moment. He speaks privately to Patel. The conversation is short, almost brutal in its simplicity. Jawahar must be the leader, Gandhi says. Will you withdraw? For a second, the years bend around them. Karamsad's cracked fields, London's law books, Keda's dusty lanes, Bardoli's defiant peasants, prison walls. All of it has brought Patel to this corridor, this request. He could refuse. The party machinery is behind him. The numbers are on his side. But another calculation clicks in his mind, colder and larger than personal ambition. A public clash at the top of Congress at this second could tear the movement apart just when Britain is preparing its exit. He does what he has done his whole life when facing an impossible choice. He cuts into his own flesh. He withdraws. Nehru becomes Congress president. When the interim government is formed under the last viceroy, Lord Mountbatten, later that year, it is Nehru who takes the central chair. The cameras flash on Jawaharlal. The world greets India's soon-to-be prime minister. Patel, in a simple dhoti and shawl, takes his place as vice president of the Executive Council, effectively deputy prime minister, and crucially as the man in charge of home, states, and information. The glamour goes to someone else. The hardest, dirtiest work comes to him. British officials passing around typed plans in airy offices are now speaking a new word with nervous frequency: partition. The Muslim League is in government, demanding its own homeland. Violence has already flickered in Calcutta, Noakhali, Bihar. Above all, there is a date, a real ticking printed date. Britain will leave by June 1948. Mountbatten, impatient, will bring that date forward to August 1947. In less than a year, India must not only navigate partition and mass migration, but also decide the fate of 565 princely states, each with its own ruler, army, ambition. If they break away, if even a handful choose independence or Pakistan, the map will fracture beyond repair. On a sweltering evening in Delhi, as the fan stammers overhead, Vallabhbhai Patel studies that map again. The red pins are no longer theoretical. Each one is a palace, a private army, a possible war. He has walked away from wealth, from comfort, even from the chance to be his nation's first prime minister. Now, under a deadline the empire itself has set, he must confront the last and most dangerous rivalry of all, not just with Nehru or Jinnah, but with the very forces of chaos that could rip India apart before it can even take its first breath. The map on his desk was not a map. It was a bomb disposal manual. 565 princely states, some the size of countries, some no bigger than a dot, each ruled by a king, a nawab, a raja who had grown used to salutes, gun salvos, private armies, and British protection. In less than a year, that protection would vanish. On 15th of August 1947, British paramountcy over the princes would end. After that, every ruler would be free. Free to join India, free to join Pakistan, or free to declare his own independent kingdom. In the middle of the subcontinent, imagine waking up to a map of Europe where every town declares itself a country, where every mayor has an army. That was the nightmare staring back at Vallabhbhai Patel. The British were leaving. Time was not a line anymore. It was a countdown. He takes off his glasses, rubs his tired eyes, and looks again at the red pins stuck into the colored map. Hyderabad, Kashmir, Junagadh, Travancore, Bhopal, Jodhpur, Indore, Gwalior, Udaipur. Small, rich, stubborn, afraid. He has ministries to run, a capital to build, communal fires to put out, refugees flooding in across bleeding borders, and on top of it all, one impossible assignment: hold India together before the clock hits zero. His main rival in this race is not just the princes or Pakistan. It is also time, and Jawaharlal Nehru's very different instinct. Nehru is a natural internationalist. He talks of Asia, Africa, world peace conferences, a moral example to the globe. On the question of princely India, he is impatient, often angry, sometimes threatening in public speeches. Patel, whose job it is to actually make the deals, knows that public humiliation can push insecure rulers straight into Pakistan's arms or into suicidal independence. So he chooses a quieter weapon. He calls in a civil servant, a quiet, bespectacled man named P. Menon, a constitutional expert with a clerk's accent and a mastermind's brain. Together in long, airless meetings, they craft a simple instrument that will decide the shape of India, a short legal document called the Instrument of Accession. It offers the princes an escape route from history's stampede. Sign this, Patel tells them, and you keep your throne, your titles, your palaces. You hand over only 3 subjects to the government of India: defense, foreign affairs, communications. The rest you can keep for now. We will discuss integration slowly. Don't sign. And after 15 August, you stand alone with no British army, no legal cover, no protection. It is half handshake, half ultimatum. Velvet on the outside, iron inside. But to deliver it, he must face each ruler, each ego, each fantasy. The campaign begins. He summons the princes to Delhi one by one in small groups, in delegations. They arrive with trunks of silk, imported perfumes, monocles, suspicions. Some expect to meet a harsh peasant with rough manners. Instead, they find a man who looks like a village elder but speaks like a senior barrister, a man whose courtesy feels like a trap, and whose patience has limits you do not want to test. He offers tea. He listens. Then he strips away their illusions with a surgeon's calm. Your Highness, he tells one hesitant ruler, you have enjoyed power under the shelter of the British for 100 years. In a few months they will go. Do you really think your army of a few hundred can defend you against the anger of your own people, or against Pakistan, or against us if we must act? Another prince warns darkly, if I join India, my nobles will revolt. Patel leans forward. If you do not join India, your people will revolt. Ask yourself, whose side do you want us on when that happens? He never raises his voice. He lets the facts do the shouting. Yet there is honey with the vinegar. He promises privy purses, fixed annual payments to the rulers and their families written into the Constitution. He gives them a dignified exit from a world that is ending around them. Behind his back, critics mutter that he is bribing feudal lords with public money. He shrugs. If a few crores can buy peace for millions, he says, it is cheap. While he negotiates in Delhi's bungalows, the country outside is splitting open. Partition is no longer a theory, it is a river of blood. Trains arrive in Punjab packed with corpses. Villages in Bengal and Bihar go up in flames. In Delhi, rumors move faster than rickshaws. Muslims are hoarding arms. Hindu refugees are planning revenge. The city will burn. In this inferno, Patel is given what may be the most thankless job in the new government, Minister of Home. Order in a land that has never known this kind of chaos. He reworks entire police systems overnight. He orders open camps for refugees, food stocks, medical corps. He asks for soldiers when police are not enough. And then, in a move that shocks even his admirers, he does something many did not expect from a man known as a Hindu leader from Gujarat. He becomes the blunt defender of Delhi's Muslims. In meeting after meeting, he repeats one line, "This is now the capital of the Indian Union. Every citizen here, Hindu, Muslim, Sikh, is under our protection. There will be no Pakistan inside Delhi." When Hindu and Sikh refugees, crazed by trauma, demand revenge on Muslim neighborhoods, he sends in police and troops to stop them. When hotheads in his own camp argue that the Muslims should be pushed out to Pakistan, he snaps, "If they are loyal to India, who are you to tell them to leave?" In the cabinet, this hard line on law and order sometimes clashes with Gandhi's desperate search for peace by moral appeal and fasting. Once, when Gandhi announces yet another fast to stop violence, Patel mutters in private, half in pain, half in irritation, "While he fasts, I must feed and protect." He does both. He visits relief camps, listens to shattered men and women, orders compensation, helps organize the resettlement of millions. Nehru is often there too, in the camps, in the streets, in the photographs, comforting refugees. But when angry, armed men must be told no, when cities must be pacified by force if needed, that task usually falls to Patel. All this time, the princely question hangs like a thundercloud. Most states, seeing the writing on the wall, sign the Instrument of Accession without much drama. But some decide to play dangerous games. Junagadh is the first flashpoint, a small state on the coast of Kathiawar, Hindu majority, ruled by a Muslim Nawab who adores his dogs more visibly than his people. Surrounded entirely by Indian territory, economically tied to the mainland, Junagadh should be an easy case. Instead, in a stunning move in 1947, the Nawab announces that he is acceding, not to India, but to Pakistan. Pakistan, eager for any foothold inside India, accepts. The news hits Delhi like a punch. A Muslim-ruled state deep inside Western India joining Pakistan creates not just a legal headache, but a military one. It could be a base, a listening post, a permanent provocation. Nehru fumes in speeches. The press explodes. The Nawab's advisors talk big from safe distance. Patel's response is simple. He cuts Junagadh off. India blocks its communications, applies economic pressure, supports popular protests inside the state, encourages the Nawab's own administrators to whisper doubts into their master's ear. Within weeks, the Nawab panics and flees to Pakistan, taking his favorite dogs with him. A provisional government takes over. Patel orders a plebiscite to shut the matter firmly. The people vote. Overwhelmingly, they choose India. It is one state brought home, but it sends a wider message. There will be no Pakistan-backed islands inside India. Kashmir is the next crisis, and here the rivalry and contrast between Patel and Nehru becomes critical. A Hindu ruler, a majority Muslim population, a geographically strategic valley. Pakistan sees it as its birthright. India sees it as a test of its secular promise. At first, the indecisive Maharaja of Kashmir tries to stay independent, playing both sides. Pakistan responds with covertly supported tribal invasions. As raiders pour into the valley in October 1947, burning and killing, a frantic appeal for help reaches Delhi. Patel's instinct is immediate. Defend Kashmir, forcefully and without delay. Make no more constitutional speeches when the enemy is at the gate. Nehru, for whom Kashmir is emotionally special, his homeland, his symbol of pluralism, takes a direct hand. Mountbatten insists that any military help must be tied to the Maharaja's formal accession to India. The paperwork is signed. Indian troops are flown in. The war begins. From this point, Nehru keeps Kashmir largely under his own wing, personally managing negotiations and later taking the issue to the United Nations, a move Patel is deeply uneasy about. They do not explode at each other in public. But behind the closed doors of cabinet and correspondence, a gap opens. On Hyderabad, that gap will widen into a near collision. Hyderabad is the largest princely state in India, a landlocked empire at the heart of the Deccan, bigger than many countries in Europe. With its own currency, railway, even a state airline, its ruler, the Nizam, is among the richest men alive. His population is majority Hindu. His court is heavily Muslim. His politicians whisper of independence, of a third dominion between India and Pakistan. Hyderabad is the ticking bomb in the center of the map. If it goes independent, India will be physically cut into pieces. If it leans towards Pakistan, India will have a knife in its belly. Patel begins, as always, with negotiation. He sends envoys, he offers terms, he allows time. He tolerates delay longer than his temper likes. But in the shadows, the Nizam's advisors, particularly the fanatical Razakars led by Qasim Razvi, arm themselves, build militias, crush dissent. Villages report atrocities. Hindus flee or hide. The state becomes a powder keg wrapped in royal protocol. Nehru, wary of world opinion and anxious to project India as a peace-loving democracy, fears that sending troops into Hyderabad will be seen as naked aggression. Patel's patience snaps. Should we let the people of Hyderabad bleed forever? He asks in a cabinet room clash, just to look good in foreign newspapers. Mountbatten, the last viceroy turned governor general, has been a restraining influence, pushing for more talks, more time. In June 1948, when Mountbatten leaves India, Patel feels one brake being removed from his car. By September, after one last failed attempt at a negotiated standstill, he gives the order. Operation Polo begins. Indian troops move into Hyderabad in what the government calls a police action, a phrase that fools nobody. The Razakars crumble faster than anyone had predicted. In 5 days, Hyderabad surrenders. The Nizam broadcasts his acceptance of India. The old dream of an independent third dominion dies with barely a whimper. Later reports will reveal serious communal violence and reprisals in parts of the state as old hatreds, long bottled up, explode. For critics, this becomes proof of Patel's ruthlessness. For supporters, it is the moment the map of India is finally sealed. For Patel himself, it is something colder, a necessary surgery performed before the infection could kill the patient. While Hyderabad falls into place, something else is quietly being built in Delhi, the skeleton of the Indian state. Here again, his rivalry is not just with Nehru, but with a vision of India that could drift into soft chaos. As Home Minister, Patel pushes for a strong center, a union that can hold together wildly different regions, languages, religions, without constant civil war. He fights hard in the Constituent Assembly for central powers over security, law and order, for the ability to send in central forces when states fail. Critics whisper of authoritarianism. He hears them and remembers 1942, 1946, 1947, the riots, the massacres, the fragile calm. Liberty without order, he warns, is chaos. He coaxes, threatens, and finally convinces senior officers of the old Indian civil service and imperial police, many of them suspicious, of nationalist politicians to stay on in free India. He takes that colonial machinery with all its arrogance and power and begins to bend it. Under his watch, the Indian Administrative Service, IAS, and the Indian Police Service, IPS, are born, permanent all-India cadres, designed to hold the Union together beyond the whims of future politicians. Some of his own colleagues want to abolish these steel-framed services, seeing them as symbols of British rule. He snaps, "You want to cut the very spine of administration on the day we start walking?" On the surface, these are dry institutional battles, phrases on paper, amendments, schedules, lists. Underneath, they are the architecture of the country's future. He is everywhere. In 1 week, he is coaxing a tiny Rajput ruler to give up his palace. The next, he is ordering troops to a troubled border. The next, he is in the Constituent Assembly, cutting through windy speeches with one hard sentence. His working style is brutal and simple. Meet early, decide fast, execute. He has no time for learned papers that arrive after the deadline, for ideological hair-splitting when trains are being burned. If you want to build castles in the air, he tells a young idealist once, go ahead. Just don't ask me to lay foundations in midair too. Yet even as he builds, the cost on his own body starts to show. He is in his 70s now, diabetic, a heart that skips beats after years of prison food, travel, stress. His doctors warn him, slow down or you will stop. He laughs them off. When the house is on fire, he says, the firefighter does not go for a checkup. But there are moments, late at night, when the files have been signed, when Delhi's noisy ceiling fans whir above empty corridors, that he feels the weight pressing down. He knows that somewhere upstairs in Teen Murty House, Nehru is also awake, surrounded by his own mountains of paper, his own ghosts. Foreign policy, industrial policy, China, America, the Soviet Union. 2 men, 2 maps, 2 futures. One day one of them will have to leave the stage first. For now, as 1948 turns towards 1949, one fact stands, as clear as the lines on the maps he once studied like battlefields. An India, adoucie, that could have shattered into dozens of quarreling kingdoms, into corridors and enclaves and broken frontiers, still holds as one piece. It did not happen by accident. It did not happen by speeches alone. It happened because a farmer's son from Karamsad, who once argued about crop disputes in dusty courtrooms, spent his last strength beating princes, mobs, and time itself into a single stubborn word, union. He had just finished welding a country together when someone put a bullet through its soul. The man who had called off riots with a raised hand, who had bent princes and provinces into a single union, now stood at Birla House, staring at the blood on the ground where Mohandas Gandhi had fallen. For once, Vallabhbhai Patel had no orders to give. The Mahatma, the only man who could still look him and Jawaharlal Nehru in the eye and say no, was gone. The referee had walked off the field, leaving the 2 most powerful men in India alone with their differences, their ambitions, and a nation already cracking at the edges. Outside, Delhi was one breath away from madness. Inside, the clock on Patel's life began to tick louder than ever. The assassin, Nathuram Godse, was a Hindu extremist, a man who blamed Gandhi for being too soft on Muslims, for partition, for everything that had gone wrong. In the poisonous rumors that raced through the lanes after the shots were fired, one name came up again and again: the Rashtriya Swayamsevak Sangh, the RSS. As Home Minister, Patel did not have the luxury of grief without action. While Nehru broke down publicly, sobbing on the radio, calling Gandhi the light that has gone out, Patel's mourning took a colder form. Within days, the RSS was banned. Hundreds of its members were rounded up. Files flew across his desk, charges were drafted, security tightened. It was a brutal message from a man often painted as a Hindu strongman. No flag, no slogan, no side of religion would be allowed to challenge the union he had just built. To Hindu fundamentalists, this felt like betrayal. To Muslim citizens, it was a sudden, fierce reassurance. To Nehru, it was proof that on the question of the Indian state's authority, he and Patel were, at least for the moment, on the same side. But Gandhi's death did something else, something more dangerous. It removed the last emotional barrier between these two men and their rivalry. Their conflict was not a shouting match in public squares. It was something quieter, sharper, fought in cabinet notes, party meetings, late-night conversations that ended in long silences. They were bound by a shared past of prison and struggle, and divided by two different dreams of the future. Nehru saw India as a laboratory for grand experiments: non-alignment, socialist planning, world leadership in moral politics. He wanted heavy industry, global conferences, a constitution that leaned towards rights and liberties. Patel saw India as a wounded village trying to survive its first monsoon after a cyclone. He wanted dams, roads, steel, yes, but he also wanted a center strong enough to stamp out the next riot before it started, to crush separatism before it grew teeth. In cabinet, their differences flickered like hidden lightning. On foreign policy, Patel distrusted China, doubted the romance of internationalism, worried that Nehru's idealism would leave India exposed. On domestic politics, Nehru worried that Patel's iron grip on law and order, his closeness to conservative Congress bosses in the provinces, would turn the young republic into a fortress of old men. And after Gandhi's death, there was one question that could no longer be avoided, even if no one dared to ask it out loud. Who, after Nehru, would rule this country? The party's old guard, provincial leaders, organizational workers, most of them instinctively gravitated to Patel. He was their Sardar, the man who had stood with them in jails and struggles, who answered their letters, who understood caste equations and district feuds. The youth, the intellectuals, the poets and foreign admirers, they adored Nehru. It was not just a personal rivalry. It was a battle between two coalitions, two Indias looking warily at each other across the same cabinet table. In 1948 to 49, as the Constitution was being hammered into place, this fault line deepened. On one side of Delhi, in the Council House, the Constituent Assembly debated fundamental rights, federal structures, citizenship. On the other side, in Patel's office, State Home Secretaries lined up outside his door, files on communal flare-ups, border infiltrations, outlawed militias in their hands. He read the draft articles on liberty and equality, nodded, and then insisted on something many civil libertarians quietly hated: powerful emergency provisions, strict laws against sedition, strong central control over states that misbehaved. He had seen the subcontinent at its worst. He knew what neighbors with guns and maps of greater this or that could do. He knew how quickly slogans could turn into mobs. Write your ideals in golden ink, he is said to have told one anxious colleague, but keep a police force that can defend the paper. Nehru fretted that too much security would choke freedom. Patel feared that too much freedom too soon would kill the Union. They both won and they both lost. The Constitution, adopted on 26 November 1949, carried Nehru's ringing promises and Patel's steel framework. There were fundamental rights, and there were emergency powers. There was federalism, and there was a commanding center. Outside the assembly, fireworks marked the coming republic. Inside, Patel knew something the cheering crowds did not. He might not see the republic's first birthday as a free man walking. His health had been quietly collapsing, step by stubborn step. Diabetes, high blood pressure, an overworked heart. Each day in office hammered another crack into his body. He ignored the early warnings. Pain in the chest? Just gas? Exhaustion? There's work to be done. Doctor's orders? File them under later. But in late 1948 and again in 1949, the facade broke. Publicly, the government put out bland bulletins. Sardar Patel is slightly unwell. Privately, doctors counted each heartbeat with growing alarm. There were days when he could barely climb stairs without stopping for breath. Nights when Manaben, his fiercely loyal daughter, and constant shadow sat outside his bedroom door listening for the slightest movement. For the first time in his life, Patel felt a different kind of deadline. Not the British timetable for transfer of power. Not the looming date of independence. Not the last day to convince a prince to sign. This was biological, unnegotiable. He looked at the files on his desk. Reorganization of provinces, the future of linguistic states, the final settlement with the RSS, on the tremors in Hyderabad and Kashmir, the integration of tiny French and Portuguese pockets that still dotted India's coasts like colonial scars. He could sense history reaching for his pen while his body reached for a bed. His main rival now was not Nehru, it was his own failing heart. Yet even as illness shrank his days, the political battle inside the Congress Party exploded into the open. In 1950, the presidency of the Congress, once a rotating honor, now a symbol of who truly commanded the party machine, became a lightning rod. Nehru wanted a Congress that would move left, embrace more radical land reforms, push social change faster. He worried that the party's old provincial bosses, with their caste networks and patronage politics, would drag India back into feudalism in Indian clothes. Patel, the organizer who had held the party together through prison and repression, instinctively trusted these very bosses. They were, to him, the bones and muscles of the organization, the men who actually delivered votes and managed chaos. When the conservative Purushottam Das Tandon emerged as the candidate for party president, he had Patel's blessing. Nehru was uneasy, then openly opposed. The campaign for an internal party post began to look like a shadow war for the country's future. Letters flew. Allies whispered. Editorials took sides without naming names. One camp saw in Patel's support for Tandon a desire to keep the party anchored in its traditional power structures, with religion sensitive, politics and regional satraps still powerful. The other camp feared that if Nehru was weakened inside the party, his entire program, secularism with teeth, land redistribution, our foreign policy of independence from both Cold War blocs, would be strangled in committee rooms. Tandon won. On paper, it was a victory for Patel's network. In reality, it was a victory he might not live long enough to use. Nehru, humiliated but not broken, responded with a move that stunned even his critics. He threatened to resign from the prime ministership and work as an ordinary party worker if the Congress line did not match his convictions. The country, still haunted by partition and Gandhi's death, looked at the possibility of yet another earthquake at the top and froze. Here, in this moment of maximum tension, the twist came from the one man whose rivalry had fueled the crisis. Patel stepped back. The man who had arm-twisted kings, who had stared down armed militias, who had threatened to resign repeatedly when princely negotiations hit deadlock, now chose to unclench his political fist. In private conversations with party leaders, in letters we can still read today, he made his position clear. Nehru must remain unchallenged. As the head of the government, his moral prestige and international standing were assets India could not afford to discard. He had his doubts about some of Nehru's ideas. He did not hide them. But he also knew that a split at the top, a real fracture between them, could tear the Congress apart, and with it, the very union he had spent his last decade protecting. "I have been with him for 30 years, he wrote to one colleague. "We have suffered together. We have worked together. Now let us not lose each other." The man cast by many as Nehru's internal rival used his last full reserves of influence to protect Nehru's position. It was an unexpected move, almost a final act of discipline, not to a person but to the fragile idea of India above both of them. The cost was personal and it was swift. By mid-1950, Patel was visibly a shadow of the Sardar who had bulldozed Hyderabad and sculpted the map. The broad shoulders stooped, the booming voice thinned. Even his famous temper seemed quieter, as if anger now needed to be conserved like air. Doctors in Delhi begged him to rest in the hills, away from files and visitors. He was moved to Dehradun, then Mussoorie, then back again, searching for a climate his failing heart could tolerate. Manaben recorded, in her neat, cramped handwriting, the dull details of medicine schedules, the brief, bright moments when her father would crack an old joke, The long hours of silence when he lay staring at the ceiling, his mind still ticking over border issues and party notes. He received letters from chief ministers, from civil servants, from ordinary villagers who still addressed him as Sardar Saheb. Many ended with the same plea, "Get well. We still need you," but his own body refused. In December 1950, after a few days in Bombay for medical treatment, his condition crashed. The heart that had raced against history ran out of beats. On 15th of December 1950, in a room in Birla House overlooking the sea, Vallabhbhai Patel left the stage he had held together for so long. Delhi declared mourning. Parliament stood in silence. Across the country, flags drooped at half-mast, and in that stunned quiet, the reaction that mattered most came from the one man whose path had run so tightly, so tensely alongside his. Jawaharlal Nehru, the poet prime minister, did not hide behind prepared words that day. In Parliament, his voice broke more than once as he tried to describe what India had lost. "We have had our differences," he admitted, "but I knew that when there was a crisis, every one of us turned to him." He called Patel the builder and consolidator of New India, a man of iron will and kindly nature, whose departure left him feeling lonely. The word hung in the air like an unfinished sentence. The rivalry that could have split a country ended not with a coup or a purge, but with one man standing alone at the top, looking around for the gruff companion who had argued with him in endless meetings and protected him in even more. In death, Patel did what he had always done in life. He forced people to face the reality beneath the rhetoric. Nehru might be the face of India, but without Patel, the map itself would have looked very different. The years that followed would test this map in ways neither of them could fully foresee. Nehru would go on to create linguistic states Patel had worried about, trusting that voters would choose India over language if forced to. Borders would still bleed in future wars with Pakistan and China. Separatist movements would rise in Nagaland, Punjab, Kashmir, the Northeast. And each time, without always knowing it, the Indian state would reach for tools Patel had left behind. The All India services that he had saved from abolition, the IAS and IPS, became the nervous system of the Republic, sending officers from Kerala to Kashmir, from Bihar to Bombay, binding places through career paths and shared training. The emergency powers he had insisted on, often abused and misused in later decades, still sat there in the Constitution like locked weapons in a glass case, pulled out whenever politicians felt the Union was at stake. His decision to integrate princely states before they could form separate identities on language or religion proved decisive. When linguistic reorganization did happen, it took place inside an already united India, not as a pretext for secession. Even his harsh, much-criticized ban on the RSS after Gandhi's murder left a permanent mark. When the ban was finally lifted, it was on Patel's terms. The organization had to accept the Constitution, give up uniforms and private militias, and formally declare loyalty to the Republic. The Hindu right, which would one day rise to dominate Indian politics, did so under a constitutional umbrella he had forced it to step under. He had wrestled passions into institutions. That, more than any speech or statue, was his legacy. For decades after his death, his memory moved like a ghost through Indian politics. Nehru's face was on posters, textbooks, currency. His birthday became Children's Day. His speeches were cited in court judgments. Patel's image floated in and out. He was Sardar in history chapters. The stern presence in black and white photographs of the Constituent Assembly, the man mentioned, respectfully on Independence Day speeches, then quickly passed over. Some of Nehru's critics, and Nehru had many from the right and the left, began to ask a loaded, impossible question. What if the i.e. Mahatma had chosen Patel as India's first prime minister instead of Nehru? The question was history as counterfactual theater, but it carried real emotion. Would Patel have been tougher on Pakistan? Would he have avoided the romance with China that ended in the 1962 war? Would he have moved faster on land reform or slower? Would he have allowed the Congress to splinter instead of trying to hold one giant umbrella over every shade of opinion? Nobody could answer. But the very asking of the question kept his shadow alive. Governments he might have opposed in life claimed him in death. Parties he would have banned under his own home ministry praised his firmness. Regional leaders who resented Delhi's power called him the true federalist, even as they demanded concessions he would never have given. He had become what every powerful leader eventually becomes, a screen onto which everyone projected the version of him they needed. And then, long after Nehru was gone, long after the Congress itself had shrunk and fractured, another twist arrived from the very region where Patel's life had begun, Gujarat. In the 21st century, as a new generation of leaders from Gujarat rose to national power, Patel was pulled back to center stage. They called him the Iron Man of India, built museums in his honor, named schemes and institutions after him. In 2018, on a rocky river island in his home state, a statue of Vallabhbhai Patel was unveiled. At 182 meters, it towered higher than the Statue of Liberty, higher than every planned and existing statue in the world at that time. From the air, it looked like a giant walking out of the river, striding toward the mainland, a shawl wrapped tightly against the wind, eyes focused somewhere far beyond the horizon. Supporters said, "At last the man who stitched India together stands taller than the world." Critics muttered, "In death too, Patel is being used as a weapon, this time to attack Nehru's legacy." Perhaps both were right. Perhaps if he could see it, the old Sardar would have shaken his head at the scale, at the cost, at the speeches made in his name. Or perhaps he would have looked down at the highways and railways and power lines threading a still arguing, still unbroken India, together, and thought, in his own blunt way, the map is still in one piece. That was the job. Everything else is commentary.